evening, the Board of Education is recognizing an outstanding group of Parkway employees. We're honoring 8 newly National Board certified teachers and 3 new National Board certified nurses. In addition, the Board of Education will be recognized. I guess you didn't need to hear that from me. And first, I'd like to invite Amy Gerkencoates, Talent Development Coordinator, to the podium.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Marty, President Feldman, Vice President Applebaum, Ms. Stover, and members of the board. As the Talent Development Coordinator, it is with great pleasure and pride that I come here tonight to celebrate 8 more talented Parkway educators that have earned National Board Educator status, bringing our district total up to 40 nationally certified educators. As you know, National Board Certification is an advanced teaching credential. It complements but does not replace a state teacher's license. National Board Certification is achieved upon successful completion of a voluntary assessment program designed to recognize effective and accomplished teachers who meet high standards based on what teachers know and should be able to do. Certification consists of 4 components: content knowledge, differentiation and instruction, teaching practice and learning environment, and effective and reflective practitioner. Throughout the process, educators are able to apply what they're learning to their practice and connect with other teachers pursuing certification. As a district, we support educators through their journey with candidate support group meetings and partner them with a current Parkway National Board certified teacher to serve as a mentor. National Board spent the last 4 years revising the process, and this group represents the first class to graduate with the new, even more rigorous requirements. We have over 25 educators, each at different places on their journey, collecting data, videotaping lessons, measuring impact, and adjusting their instruction to be able to join the ranks of these 40 previous teachers that have successfully walked this path. To date, just over 100,000 educators across the nation have received National Board certification, or just under 3% of the nation's educators. Tonight, we celebrate our newest members of this very elite group. And I know, Mr. Todd, you had asked about how we compare to other districts across our area, and I would say very favorably. In Clayton, there's only 4, for floor 2, Hazelwood 18, Ladue 3, Melville 6, Pattonville 19. The only one that gets us is Rockwood. But we will continue to chase them down. So at this time, I would like to introduce Miss Carrie Backel. Congratulations. Mrs. Monica Dickens. Congratulations, Monica. Mr. Lee Johnson. Congratulations, Lee. Miss Libby Reed. Congratulations. Miss Jessica Schwartzman. Congratulations. And a double congratulations to Mrs. Katie Sullivan, who was recently married over break. So Miss Katie Walsh Sullivan. You knew I had to say something. And finally, Mrs. Anna Wickenhauser. Congratulations to our class of 2017 National Board Certified Educators.
like to call Dr. Robin Wallen, Director of Health Services.
Good evening, Ms. Applebaum, Dr. Marty, members of the board. I'm really thrilled to have this opportunity to share in this celebration. According to the National Board for Certification of School Nurses, the NCSN, or National Certified School Nurse, is a trademark credential granted to registered nurses who meet educational, employment, and other criteria and who have successfully passed the national examination managed by the National Board for Certification of School Nurses. The NCSN process is accredited by the American Board of Nursing Specialties, whose rigorous standards ensure that the credentialing process of the NBCSN meet or exceed industry standards for certification, and that its examination is reflective of the knowledge of what is expected of a proficient school nurse. In addition to the nurses that we're going to be recognizing tonight, we also have 20 other certified nurses, including myself. Also Laura I. from Barrett's Elementary, Jane Sennett from McKelvey Elementary, Susan Rothman at South Middle, Catherine Park at Oakbrook Elementary, Shonda Jacobs at Southwest Middle, Sarah Dahl at West Middle, Mary Landis at Ross Elementary, Sarah Sinovich at Fern Ridge, Ann Polzing at Green Trails, Leslie Rothrock at Sorrento Springs Elementary, Laura Salivar at South High, Jerry Drummond at Henry Elementary, Lois Birch at West High, Ellen Olashuk at Highcroft Ridge Elementary, Kathy Wallace at Central Middle, Ruth Collins at the Early Childhood Center, Gayla Thomas at Instructional Services Center, and Becky Cartmill, our float nurse. I'm very proud to note that in Missouri, 1/3 of the nationally certified school nurses in the state are Parkway District school nurses. This speaks volumes about the professionalism and expertise of our school nurses. Our talented, skilled, compassionate, and committed school nurses deliver high-quality nursing services in our schools all day, every day. Please join me in congratulating our newly certified school nurses. Marilyn Perry from Piermont. Connie Connolly from Carmen Trails. And Ashley Gunn from Craig Elementary. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I just want to congratulate our National Board teachers and nurses, and want to say that in both cases, when we think about the professionalism of individuals, it's not easy. Both are very, very rigorous, as Amy talked about, and getting more rigorous, and it takes a lot of time and effort besides the work that people are already doing, because I don't think the teachers or nurses took off any time. This is all on their own, evenings, summers, probably some family time. And when Amy said only Rockwood is ahead of us, our pace has picked up a lot, and thanks to Liz Morrison and now Amy, we're gonna overtake Rockwood someday in National Board. Right, Kevin? That's right. But we're very, very proud of our teachers and our nurses. It speaks volumes to the professionalism of both groups, and thank you very much. And families, thank you for your support. Well, next week, I believe Missouri, by proclamation, is recognizing boards of education. This is an annual event in Missouri, and I think it's great that we take time in our communities to recognize perhaps some of the best servants, public servants we have in any place, because board members serve without compensation, without anything else that I guess maybe sometimes we assume goes with that kind of service. They don't have any extra perks. their extra perks is meetings and work that we provide. So our Board of Education deserves recognition, and we're doing that tonight. So each of the Superintendent's Action Team members, there are 7 of us, are going to take turns recognizing our board members one by one. And I just want to say that I've had the pleasure in my career to work probably with over 100 board members. And I tell people, my peers, and I tell people here in Parkway that we are very, very fortunate to have just an outstanding Board of Education who takes seriously their role, puts children upmost in their work, and continually strives to set high expectations for all of us. So we're very, very proud of our Board of Education. I did place, by the way, for you board members, one of my favorite, and this is only part of an hour-and-a-half speech that Teddy Roosevelt gave in 1910, but it's called The Man in the Arena. And I'm not going to read it, but I would just simply say it makes reference to the fact that in our world, and this is especially true today, there's a lot of people in the society that, want to be critics and cynics, but the Man in the Arena made reference to those people, like our Board of Education, that step up and serve. And so let's give credit to the men and women in the arena who really do great work. So it's my pleasure to start off this evening to recognize our Board of Education President, Beth Feldman. Beth, now I've known you now and worked with you for 7 years. In those 7 years, we have seen a lot of challenges. We've had to make some tough decisions. We've had much to celebrate, and we've certainly had a lot of meetings. But through all that, I have come to rely on you in many, many ways, and I'd like to just highlight those. First, Beth, you always put students and their welfare before anything else. You never waver in that principle. You have constantly been a child advocate in the work you do and the statements you make, and that's certainly been very, very clear in my world, and I think all of us would agree. Secondly, you are so fair and ethical, and you expect that in others. Board members, fellow board members, administrators, educators, the people that surround you. Thirdly, you value every staff member in Parkway, no matter of their role and tenure. I know you care deeply about people we honor here, but I know you care about all the other 3,000 approximately employees in Parkway. You also value everyone's input and communication, and you insist that we respond respectfully and with clarity to all questions that come from our public, staff, and students, whether that's here at board meetings or through emails or through questions. You simply expect us to respond, and that we do. And finally, you expect us all to be kind and thoughtful in our relationships with one another. You value disagreement, but you do not honor or endorse disrespect, hostility, or uncivil behaviors. You truly do expect us to all be at our very best. Your leadership on the board has been outstanding. You do not fear making tough decisions or unpopular decisions. Again, it is about what is right and good for our kids. As I said, Teddy Roosevelt's speech really reflects your work and all the rest of the board members. Beth, you have a wonderful and supportive husband and family. I know you love them dearly, and that's so apparent. You also are a great Parkway and West County citizen. I want to personally thank you for your support and your modeling of leadership and your suggestions and ideas. And I want to just tell a little story about Beth. You've heard a lot over the years about the SPARK program and how important that's become in Parkway. But I'll tell you a little story. Beth and I had the opportunity to go to Blue Valley several years ago and to hear the program there called CAPS, Blue Valley, Kansas School District, right across in Johnson County from Kansas City. And we were very, very impressed. And as we were getting ready to board the plane to fly back here, Beth told me, and this is like November, Keith, we're going to do that program next year. And we did. And so that's the kind of leadership, Beth's foresight, her ambition, her desire to do what's right for kids. And we were able to carry that off. And again, it was Beth's insistence that we get moving on that and we not wait. So Beth, from SAT and all our district personnel, thank you for all you've done and continue to do as our board president. Thank you very much.
Good evening. It is is with much delight that I recognize our board vice president, Kim Applebaum. Kim's been a member of the board since 2012. Not only has Kim served on the board, she's also volunteered at her children's school over the years and given much of her time and dedication to Parkway kids. To name a few of the activities that Kim's been involved in over the years: PTO secretary, room party planner, spirit wear chair, Cub Scout den leader, Boy Scout treasurer, and the West High band boosters, very involved with the band. Both of Kim's children are alums of Parkway West High School. Matthew graduated in 2015 and Nicholas in 2017. As a vested parent, Kim's service to the district brought a personal perspective through the many roles that she's embraced. Kim currently serves on a number of subcommittees here in Parkway and has seen a wide variety of committees since serving on the board. During her tenure as a board member and parent volunteer, Kim has been a strong advocate for Parkway, actively keeping in mind what is in the best interest of students' academic, social, emotional, and physical well-being, always keeping what's best for kids in the forefront of her mind. Kim knows the importance of meeting kids' needs, taking them where they are, and stretching them to the next level, which helps all of us do our very best to respond to the challenges of our ever-changing world. Over the years, Kim will tell you that she's acquired the appreciation of being a board member. The work, the dedication, all that encompasses what it takes to help manage a large school district. Kim believes the district mission, and she advocates for our work around our district goals. I've seen Kim display much passion as she has worked on behalf of Parkway students. As Kim makes decisions, she thinks about the mission. She thinks about all of the students that she serves here in Parkway. Kim Applebaum does not see leadership as a position or a title, yet she sees it as an action or an example. And I hope others who aspire to serve on the Parkway board take note of how Kim has served over the years. These past 5 years, you have given countless time and attention, and our mission would not be possible for board members like you and for all of us to do our work. Because of your investment and your interest, we all can move forward and do what's in the best interest of kids. Parkway always celebrates our students and we celebrate our staff, but at this moment, I take pride in celebrating you, Kim Applebaum. Please join me in celebrating her service.
Good evening. I have the distinct honor of honoring Debbie Hopper, board member. Debbie, when I think of you, I think of a caring mother that makes a difference in Parkway School District for her children and for her community that she lives in. Debbie, not only as her paying job, is an administrative director of research operations at WashU. As her non-paying but very rewarding job, she's a proud mother of 2 Parkway students currently. She was initially immersed in Parkway with the enrollment of her son in Parents as Teachers program. Her son is currently a high schooler, and her daughter is currently at Claymont Elementary. For Parkway, Debbie brings many talents to our board, including an analytical perspective. Debbie is very well informed and analyzes decisions very carefully prior to voting on issues. She cares deeply for children, and she cares deeply for the community. Debbie always wants to do what's best for Parkway. Debbie serves on many committees in Parkway, including the Finance Human Resources Subcommittee, the Early Childhood Communication Advisory Board, and Government Relations, just to name a few. Debbie's serving her 4th year as a board member, and we're extremely thankful for her leadership. Debbie, we're so delighted that you volunteer your time and talents to serve as a member of Parkway School District Board of Education. You help to make every day a great day at Parkway. Your leadership assists us in ensuring that all students are capable, curious, caring, and confident learners who understand and respond to the challenges of this ever-changing world. Debbie, thank you for all that you do.
Well, good evening. Tonight, I have the honor of recognizing board member Jeff Todd. Jeff was elected to the board last spring, so he's finishing his first year on the board. However, Jeff's involvement and service to Parkway goes back much further than that. It all started when he attended elementary school at Mason Ridge, and then middle school at East Junior, now known as Northeast Middle, and then ultimately graduating from West High School. Jeff has led a life of volunteer service. In addition to serving as both the West Middle and West High PTO presidents, Jeff has served in a leadership capacity in a variety of school and district events and projects over the years. You could not name them all. But most recently includes serving on the Project Parkway Steering Committee for a number of years, and also taking a leadership role in the Proposition S bond campaign in 2014. Those are things you may know about Jeff. Here are a few things that you might not know about Jeff Todd. First, Jeff is not only an Eagle Scout with the Boy Scouts, which is the highest rank possible, but what you might not also know is that Jeff is a third-generation Eagle Scout, and, wait for it, his son just recently completed his Eagle Scout to be a fourth-generation Eagle Scout. And if you know much about that program, you know it tells you a lot about Jeff and his family's dedication and commitment to achievement. And finally, you might be interested to know that Jeff really loves pie. Yes, I said pie. In fact, Jeff loves pie so much that he can often be found on social media sharing tips and recommendations for the best pie recipes around. Check it out. I love pie too, so I love that. Jeff, after watching you and learning from you since you came on the board, it has become obvious that you work so hard to make every decision in the best interest of our students and our community. You're a responsible and caring person, and we are truly fortunate to have you on this school board. So on behalf of a grateful community and school district, Jeff, we thank you for your service.
Good evening. I have the pleasure of honoring Sudhir Rathod. Sudhir has been a director on the Board of Education when he was elected in April of 2016. And Sudhir is completing his second year on the board. Sudhir, when you submitted your biography, when you ran for the Board of Education, you included a quote from Nelson Mandela. The quote states, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." Reading and reflecting on this quote made me realize just how much education you had to go through to become a member of the Parkway Board of Education. Hours of training from MSBA on school laws, Robert's Rule of Order, board members' roles and responsibilities, protocol, policies, procedures, the list goes on. All of this education arms you and other board members with the power to change Parkway. This powerful weapon of education comes also by reading board materials, listening to presentations, analyzing data, reading curriculum, and attending meetings. This education frames your opinion to make those decisions along with other fellow board members regarding future and the futures here in Parkway. In your biography, you also had a goal for Parkway. By the end of your term, you wanted Parkway not only to be top in the state, but top in the nation. Over the last 2 years, Parkway has been recognized on national level in many areas. With your continued support and dedication, this goal can be realized, and maybe Parkway can change the world. You are passionate about your community and Parkway schools. This is why you ran for the Board of Education. Thank you for your service in focusing on the words of Nelson Mandela and for supporting the goal of providing our kids with the highest quality education to maybe one day change the world. Thank you.
Good evening. I am excited to recognize Dr. Sam Shortino. On behalf of the Parkway School District, Sam, thank you for your service on the Board of Education. Sam has been on the Board of Education since 2010, long time. You've been around even longer than that. I didn't know this, but Dr. Shortino has served as a teacher and a building and district level administrator in the Parkway School District. He has served as a middle school teacher, middle school assistant principal, and principal. He has also served the Parkway community at the district level as manager of secondary curriculum and instruction, executive leadership, principal, and assistant superintendent for human resources. That's a long list. He obviously cares about kids. Your whole life has been about kids. He also has participation in a number of boards, committees, and professional associations. It highlights his commitment towards service to others. Board members have a crucial role in our communities and schools. They're extraordinary people who voluntarily tackle the enormous job of governing the district, and we have an extraordinary district. In my time in Parkway, I've come to know Sam, Dr. Shortino, in two capacities. First, as an elementary school principal, and now as Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. Dr. Shortino, he is a kind, thoughtful, and wise person. His smile and positive words immediately set a warm tone. I've watched firsthand the many, 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 many hours that Dr. Shortino has spent reflecting on, challenging, and supporting Parkway's work for kids. Dr. Shortino, we appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for all you do for Parkway.
Though she is sick and not able to be with us, we do want to still recognize Christy Klein Davis and thank you for all of her service to the board. Ms. Klein Davis is in her first year on the board, having joined at the same time that Mr. Todd joined us as well. She's part of the Student Services Action Team, and as I asked around for people who've worked closely with Christy, I kept hearing the same thing over and over again, that she's an advocate for all, that she pushes us to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. She's constantly bringing us resources to help us better support our students, recommending things that we should consider so that we can better meet the needs of Parkway students, constantly advocating for us to achieve our mission of ensuring that all of our students are capable, curious, caring, and confident learners. And she raised her hand and signed up for the difficult task of being a board member even before her children were old enough to be in Parkway schools. And she does all that while in her professional life also working in evaluation, strategic planning, and learning, and she certainly brings those skills and talents here to the Parkway School District as a board member, letting us learn from her expertise in those areas as well. So while she couldn't be here with us right now, we do want to thank Chrissy Klein Davis for her service on the board.
On behalf of the entire board, I want to thank the members of Superintendent's Action Team for those lovely testimonials. We appreciate it, even though it's a little embarrassing. Thank you all for coming tonight. We're going to take a few minutes break and give everybody who has no business at the rest of our meeting a chance to get up and leave. And you're all welcome to join us for the rest. It's going to be action-packed, I guarantee it, but I understand that people have other things that they've got to do. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and I bid you good evening. ready? All right, thanks, everybody. We're going to keep going. Next is 6.0, additions, corrections, and modifications to the agenda. 6.01, addendum to agenda item 10.06, approval of personnel items. 6.02, item 10.11, approval of request for professional services. Tony Prickett from Region Insights, it's been pulled from the consent agenda. 6.03, addition of agenda item 15.01, call for a special meeting on February 2nd, 2018. 7.0, citizen statements. I've got one tonight, and it is Caitlin Culver. Please come up to the podium, and I've got your address. So you can just say your name and whether or not you're a resident of Parkway, and then you've got a full 3 minutes.
I'm Caitlin Culver. I'm an 8th grader at Southwest Middle School, and I'm here to talk about the Japanese program at Southwest Middle School. At Southwest Middle School, recently we got the Japanese program. In 6th grade, I and some other students were exposed to the Japanese club at our school, which was basically a small introduction to learning the Japanese language, and it was run by Mr. Cook, who's the Japanese teacher at Southwest Middle School and at South High. And through that, I've learned a lot about Japanese culture, and I've had many opportunities to volunteer at the Botanical Garden for the Japanese Festival, and other students have as well. And in 6th grade, we didn't have the Japanese program, and I got with some other students, and we were able to get enough to have a Japanese class. And because of that, I've been able to learn Japanese for the past 2 years, and I've had a really nice time learning that. Last year, some 6th graders signed up to be in Japanese this year, and now they're still taking the language, and a lot of them are enjoying it. But recently, my principal has put up the idea of getting rid of the Japanese program at my school for the most part, due to staffing. And I'm disappointed because I believe the Japanese program brings up a lot of opportunities for students, a lot of career options for the future with students, and it brings them a lot of insight into the world and problems around the world that they might not get to learn about unless they take this language. And a lot of people consider it a bit scary since it's all the way in East Asia. But I think it's important for students to learn about other cultures, and I think that it's important that we keep the program at the school. I understand that online classes are an option, but my parents have raised me to leave a legacy and make a place better than, or leave a place better than it was before. And I believe keeping the Japanese program at Southwest Middle School will bring many opportunities to many students. And I'd like to ask the school board to ask Mr. McPherson if he could consider keeping the program, because it's very important to me and other students. Thank you.
Caitlin, thank you very much for representing your school so well. You make us very proud.
Thank you.
And the school board, traditionally, we respond to our citizen statements in writing, so you'll be hearing back from us in writing. 8.0, approval of agenda, January 17th, 2018. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for the regular meeting of the Board of Education scheduled for January 17th, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Communications, calendar of meetings. The next regular board meeting will take place on Wednesday, February 21st, 2018, beginning at 7 p.m. at Central Middle School. An anticipated closed session will be held at 6 p.m. The mid-year board retreat will take place on Saturday, January 27th at Parkway's Administrative Center, beginning at 8 a.m. 9.02, board candidate filing. Board candidate filing ended yesterday at 5 p.m. Individuals who have filed for a board seat are in order of filing, and if you're here, please stand up as I call your name. Number 1, Jeannie Ames. Number 2, Kevin Seltzer. 3, Jonathan Taylor. 4, Matthew Schindler. And 5, Amy Bonnet. Thank you. The election will be held on April 3rd, 2018, and I'll also say that there are 2 seats. You can sit down. Thank you. There are 2 seats that will be open. That will be Mrs. Applebaum's and mine. Thank you for coming. 9.02, board liaison reports.
Last week, myself and Mrs. Applebaum and Mrs. Feldman attended the HR Finance Subcommittee meeting with the HR Finance SAT individuals. So thank you so much to Patty Bedborough, Amy Joyce, all the other people that were there. And so thank you, because you helped us to prepare for tonight's meeting, actually, with fewer questions. So I appreciate that, and it's always great to be able to get together with that group and understand the issues that are coming down from HR and finance. On the TLA subcommittee side, we continue with my board colleagues, Dr. Sortino and Jeff Todd, under the advisement of Kevin Beckner. We are continuing to review board policies under Section I of the school board policy sections. So we are committed to running through about 45 to 50 policies by March. So we are spending our time together doing that, and taking great care in understanding what we're embarking upon, and making sure that our policies are updated and meeting current law, and being well coordinated with the other policies within the district.
I do. I just want to make a quick statement. Ditto on what Debbie said about the HR Finance Subcommittee. You guys are phenomenal at speaking our language, too, because I'm not a finance person. But I appreciate all the time that you guys put into like researching the bids and looking at all those contracts and making sure that we are getting the best work for our dollar and meeting the needs of our financial responsibilities, as well as the recruitment. I mean, you guys have a busy schedule coming up for recruitment and making sure that we are hitting those diverse areas. So I appreciate all the time that you guys put into that. Thanks.
I'll echo Debbie's comments about reviewing the policy. Kevin's been very good at keeping us on track, so thank you very much. We're almost halfway through, I think. Getting more? That's good. I do want to thank the folks with the PAMI organization. They had me out last month, and I enjoyed a lot of different foods from different cultures, and learned about a few cultures that I didn't know very much about, so that was an enjoyable evening. I got a chance to work at the food pantry again a couple more times, once with my daughter who was home from college, so that was fun. And they continue to do some great work over there. They provided 50-something Christmas dinners to some families, so that was neat. And then just last night I was fortunate enough to be at the 8th grade curriculum night at West High, and see the look of terror and excitement in the parents and kids alike. But it was really neat to be able to talk to some of the 8th graders that were there thinking about different things that they could do when they get to high school this fall, and all the opportunities and challenges that await them. And I didn't talk to one that was was more scared than they were excited. So they seem to all genuinely be excited and happy to be there. So.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move on to 9.04, upcoming subcommittee meetings. Project Parkway Steering Committee will meet at 8:30 on Wednesday, January 31st at the Instructional Services Center. The Student Services Subcommittee will meet at 4:30 on Thursday, January 25th, also at the Instructional Services Center. TLA Subcommittee, that's Teaching, Learning, and Accountability. 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, February 8th, also at the Instructional Services Center. Project Parkway's quarterly meeting will be held at 6:30 on Monday, February 12th at Central High School. Details of the meetings will be posted within 24 hours of the anticipated meetings. 10.0, the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented in the January 17th, 2018 board materials?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Is there anything that needs to be pulled to action or closed? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, action items. 11.01, approval of the 2018-19 budget assumptions. Does anybody have any questions for Patty Bedborough? Patty? No, Patty?
Sorry, tried it.
I think you could go take your seat because I think we're just going to vote.
Excellent.
All right.
Well, Patty, just to clarify, these were pretty much, we've already reviewed these. So
This,
there was
correct. The
no
report that
changes.
was presented is exactly the report that was presented last month.
Okay,
So
great.
it is a
So-
process of essentially you taking under consideration us applying those assumptions for our budget development.
All right.
And I would just say that I had the pleasure of watching Patty today, observe Patty as she presented some of the same information as well as talked about our zero-based approach with the principals today. And I think it was well received. I think our folks who are preparing budget understand the concept of starting with a clean sheet versus rolling over budgets and really looking carefully at planning from a real thoughtful process. So that's underway.
Okay, may I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education approve the budget assumptions for the initial development of the 2018-19 district budget?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please, Nikki.
Mrs. Applebaum?
Yes.
Mrs. Hopper?
Yes.
Mr. Rathode?
Yes.
Dr. Ciortino? Mr. Todd?
Yes.
Mrs. Feldman?
Yes, the motion carries 6-0. 11.02, approval of the 2018 legislative priorities. We've seen these before. Does anybody have any questions for Annie Dickerson? Okay, may I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education approve the 2018 legislative priorities as presented in the January 17th, 2018 board meeting materials?
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Applebaum?
Yes.
Mrs. Hopper?
Yes.
Mr. Rathode?
Yes.
Dr. Ciortino?
Yes.
Mr. Todd?
Yes.
Mrs. Feldman?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. We have no policy review tonight, and now we have our reports. 13.01, call on Kevin Beckner, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability, and Dr. Gina Piccini, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services.
Well, thank you very much, President Feldman, Vice President Applebaum, members of the board, Dr. Marty, Mrs. Stover. We're very pleased to discuss Goal 1 with you tonight of Project Parkway. We're fortunate with Goal 1 that we've talked at length about several different issues related to Goal 1 up to this point. In fact, this is the third consecutive month that we've had a topic directly related to Goal 1. As a result, we should be able to keep some of our conversation brief because we've had lots of discussion about this, but we do want to make sure that you have a picture of the work going on under Goal 1 and to position our work and understand where we are, we do want to make sure how our strategic plan fits together. We begin with our mission, vision, and learning principles. These are the mission and vision that guide us and the things we work directly towards. Our learning principles are those things that guide us in terms of classroom practice and what we hope to see in our classrooms. We then have our goals in Project Parkway 2.0 that's organized under Goal 1, Goal 2, and Goal 3. Goal 1 is our student goal. Goal 2 is about our staff, and Goal 3 is about our resources, ensuring that we're being responsible with those resources. Under each goal, we then have some measurable objectives. How will we know that we're achieving that goal? And then in order to determine what steps we'll actually take to achieve those, we develop our strategies. As we developed our strategies, measurable objectives around Goal 1, we know that we went out now 2 years ago for a listening tour and talked to over 1,100 individuals, from students to staff to parents, to make sure that we had a good sense of what our community was thinking about Parkway and the kinds of things that they were hoping for their students and their education. Goal 1 reads that Parkway students are learners who positively engage in an ever-changing world. We're also fortunate that during that listening tour, one of our questions directly addressed this particular goal, and we asked, what do students need to navigate an ever-changing world? Here we see things like problem solving, collaboration, analytical skills, but we also see character development, resiliency, things that we might consider soft skills, and things that we really want to make sure that we're producing in our graduates so that they are whole people and so that they can be productive as they leave into that ever-changing world. Our measurable objectives under Goal 1 are largely mission-related measures. We want to make sure that each student asks and pursues meaningful questions, that they transfer their learning to new and unique situations beyond our school walls, that they seek to understand the views, values, cultures of others, that they're pursuing a personal direction and setting their own goals, that they're kind and displaying concern for the well-being of self and others, and that they're meeting or demonstrating growth towards all of our academic benchmarks, whether those are state or local, and that they're doing that across all curricular areas. To do so, we've developed 2 twin strategies in order to achieve this goal. Those are character education and personalized learning. Last month, we had the chance to talk in depth about personalized learning as we presented the task force report on personalized learning, and that work will continue with an action team that begins at the end of this month. In that, we saw that we really are working towards a lot of different things with personalized learning to make sure that we are meeting the unique needs of every single student in Parkway. We also know, however, that that other side, the character side, the side of our students becoming the kinds of people that we can be proud of when they leave us, is important too. And with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Pacini to share more about her work in this area around Goal 1.
Thank you, Kevin. So, starting out, we have our Parkway Character Education 9 commitments. It's work that's already ongoing and already in place, that has been for some time. And so there is a model that we follow. So I'd like to fill you in a little bit on the progress of the work, starting with we've talked a lot about National Schools of Character. Parkway now has 8 schools recognized as National Schools of Character: Barrett's Elementary, Carmen Trails Elementary, Craig Elementary, Green Trails Elementary, McKelvey Elementary, Northeast Middle, Ross Elementary, and Southwest Middle. And also in 2017, Parkway was recognized as a National School of Character. Another thing to note that we haven't had an opportunity to talk about is over the past couple of years, Parkway has participated in Trauma-Informed Care Learning Collaborative. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has established a Trauma-Informed Schools Initiative. The purpose of the initiative is to help increase awareness around the symptoms of chronic interpersonal trauma and traumatic stress in children and adults. And this initiative is in place in order to better support the learning needs, and in order for us to have a better understanding and then to better support the learning needs of students. In response to this initiative, a 2-year regional learning collaborative was launched in June of 2016. In that collaborative, 26 schools across 13 public and elementary schools were involved, and Parkway as well. We had 3 Parkway elementary schools who participated, Shenandoah Valley, Craig, and Belle Reve. Update on our student climate survey in 2017. The student climate survey showed that 78% of elementary students in grades 3 through 5, 86% of students in the middle school, and 90% of high school students reported feeling safe in school. We have continued increase in AP enrollment. Large dual credit participation, 98.6 points earned on the MSIP, and that is a note about our progress. Moving on to our current work, we have the Personalized Learning Action Team, which you've heard quite a bit about, Goal 1 student interviews, which I'll let Kevin talk about.
Our Goal 1 student interviews are a data collection tool that we've been working on and are about to begin embarking on this semester with the hopes of completing a round of student interviews before break. The student interviews are how we're going to begin collecting data around our measurable objectives. In the past, we've tried to tie some of our measurable objectives directly to test score outcomes or other things that we could easily measure. The challenge with that is many of the things that we saw in those measurable objectives, such as being kind, displaying concern for the well-being of self and others, asking and pursuing meaningful questions, setting personal goals, those kinds of items, they don't show up on standardized tests. They don't show up in our test scores. But we also know that they're important things that we want our graduates to do. So in order to identify how well we as a district are helping students achieve those things, we settled on the idea of actually talking to students. So we have pulled a list already of about 400 Parkway students at random and are making sure that that mirrors our population and making sure that that group lines up so that it is a good sample of what we have in the district. And we will be gathering a team to go out and actually conduct interviews with our students and ask them for examples of our measurable objectives. For example, can you give us an example of a question that you've had that you've stuck with for a while? Can you give us examples of how you see kindness displayed in your school? If we have students who say we can't, that's okay, but that would tell us, okay, well, we need to do some more work in this area. This year, that really is generating our baseline data, since we have not done this process before, and then we'll be able to measure our progress as a system against that baseline data. So that will be beginning this semester. We also just recently concluded some work with an elementary work group. One of the things, in fact, we have a slide on this later, so I will hold off on talking more about that, but the elementary work group has been formed and completed their work to try to help us understand how we make sure that we're supporting our schools and our teachers as they're trying to support our students, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. Collaborative learning team work is continuing. Our PLC initiative that we started several years ago is an important facet of Goal 1 and making sure that we are meeting the needs of every student. In that process, those are Wednesday late start times along with additional times during the school week that teacher teams meet to answer our PLC questions. And those are, what do we expect kids to learn? How do we know that they're learning it? What do we do if they're not learning it? And what do we do if they've already learned it? Along with, so then what are the best instructional techniques and strategies we need to use? That's important work that has been going on now for several years. We continue to train our teachers and new leaders. Our focus this year actually is on shared leadership in our development this summer, where we'll be trying to grow and develop more of our collaborative team leaders and get new leadership into many of those positions.
Thank you, Kevin. In character education news, character education, we do have our 9 commitments. The character education action team is currently adding to the character education guide. Those have been in place, that guide and the 9 commitments have been in place for a few years now. They're adding additions to this in order to better assist schools in implementing and sustaining the Parkway character education commitments. The additions to the guide will also assist schools in celebrating and personalizing their growth towards fulfilling those commitments. The additions will outline model practices and strategies for each level of implementation. Continuing on with restorative practices, we are continuing with that work. Professional learning around restorative practices does continue to be provided as in-service classes and also as customized training options for whole schools. This summer, approximately 60 elementary and secondary teachers, counselors, administrators attended summer development. We added this year a 2.0 class that provided staff more opportunities to learn about the role that restorative practices plays in curriculum and addressing student behavior. During the school year, teachers from various elementary schools have or will be participating in professional learning courses. That's continuing on through the school year. And then several elementary, middle, and high schools have also hosted school-based development. Ongoing support in the application of restorative practices also continues to be provided to individual teachers or school teams who need additional guidance so they can seek additional help in order to implement in their schools, and we're continuing to provide that. In the summer of 2017, restorative practices was added as part of new educator orientation. And new last year and continuing this year was the student leadership piece. Student leadership in the context of restorative practices continues. Student leaders in elementary, middle, and high school use restorative practices as a teaching and learning tool with other students and with adults. In trauma-informed care, current work there as a result of the information gained from that learning collaborative, trauma awareness training has been added to new educator induction. We've talked a lot about the food pantry, so we'll just continue with saying, and you already reported that the addition is we had almost 50 families that received a complete meal for the holidays. The food pantry does serve more than 890 students. That was as of December. The number is likely higher. So that continues to grow in service of our students who might lack access to consistent and nutritious meals. Youth suicide awareness and prevention. By July 1st, 2018, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education requires each district to adopt a policy for youth suicide awareness and prevention that addresses at least 3 things. 1, strategies that can help identify students who are at possible risk of suicide. 2, strategies and protocols to help students at possible risk of suicide, and then protocols for responding to a suicide death. We've already taken measures toward this requirement in meeting the needs of our students at the same time by developing a protocol for use by counselors, social workers, school psychologists, and school nurses. The protocol is designed to help in the identification of and support for students who are at possible risk of suicide. And we are currently working on a model policy for your consideration. Oral Health Initiative. In August, a team of stakeholders from Parkway School District and the community came together to brainstorm ways to creatively and collaboratively meet the oral health needs of our students. From that work, a Parkway Oral Health Collaboration Steering Committee was formed and is continuing work. This spring, we have 3 elementary schools that will participate in an oral health screening project. That's a little bit about our current work. As we look to the future, between my listening and learning throughout this semester and just continuing from the work in the past, our schools continue to request training around trauma-informed care. So we will be requesting approval to continue the work around trauma-informed care starting this semester with 10 of our elementary and middle schools. Another thing that we'll be looking towards, Parkway does a great many things for the social, emotional, and physical health and well-being of our students. As a result of work completed in the elementary work group, which Kevin will talk a little bit more about, in my time listening and learning, we'll be developing plans that will continue to build upon that work, focusing on 2 main areas. So how will we foster the social, emotional learning and positive behaviors for all by all? That meaning what all of us do for all students. And then also the specialized support for students with additional needs. Thinking about starting with, we're going to be seeking to increase specialized social emotional support for elementary students, such as behavior intervention specialists, social workers. Also, in the future, Parkway and Rockwood and Character Plus are combining to create a cohort for high schools to think about their efforts in character education, and kind of working together as a cohort to synergize with one another because there are fewer high schools from which to talk to one another, and so this cohort between Rockwood and Parkway will work together and kind of brainstorm and synergize ideas for the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin Beckner.
So I mentioned the elementary work group. We know that Dr. Marty has challenged us in several areas to improve what we're doing in terms of meeting students' social emotional needs, particularly at the elementary level. We wanted to get a sense of how do schools and teachers feel about the level of support they have in doing that work. So we assembled a small team of teachers and administrators who work in elementary to help us better understand the support that they have and the support they feel they need. These were the three main themes that came out of that group that met twice in December. They felt that the curriculum was well supported, meaning they had their instructional coaches, they had wonderful elementary coordinators and team, that they felt that they really had a lot of what they need in terms of the curriculum work to make sure that they're delivering that and doing so well. The second was that there is a growing need for more social emotional support and development for students, teachers, and schools. We know that we have a growing number of students who have mental health concerns, who have trouble regulating their behavior, who we see some high need for those students, and teachers echoed that. They said, yes, we feel like we need to build capacity in this area, grow in this area, and have some more direct support in this area. And there's continued conversation, continued desire for conversation around the elementary day. Specifically, our elementary teachers have a lot that they have to do, and they have a lot on their plate. New initiatives, things they're trying to do for kids, trying to grow their character, help them develop academically, learn everything that they're supposed to learn, and it just becomes a challenge for them with those number of things. So we're going to continue that conversation about how we help alleviate some of that and support them. If there's structural things we can do, then we will do so. So that work will continue, and we'll be able to provide you more information as we continue in some of those conversations. Which brings us back to our measurable objectives for students that we shared earlier. As we continue our work in Goal 1, we know that it's going to take a multifaceted approach if we want to make sure that our students are achieving each of these 6 measurable objectives. We'll need to continue to monitor our work both around Goal 1, but our work as a system to help ensure that all of our students are capable, confident, caring learners who can respond to the challenges of an ever-changing world. With that, we'll take any questions that you might have.
Debbie. Okay, let's start with the elementary social emotional. I was a little surprised and yet disappointed to see 78% of elementary students in grades 3 through 5 report feeling safe. To me, that seems low. What has been the reaction in administration with 78% of elementary school students feeling safe? Only 78%.
I can let Dr. Boccini talk about some of the specifics around that. What I can tell you that we've done, just from a systemic perspective, is we provided each elementary principal with their specific data for their school and tried to provide time for them to collaborate together to try to answer some of those questions. We hold 3-time-a-year data meetings with our principal teams, and so Dr. Tyson brought all of the climate survey data for principals specific to their school so that they could review that, work together, collaborate together, talk about what strategies they might have. We know that that's a district average, so at some schools that might be higher and some schools that might be lower, and so we try to facilitate time for them to work together on that so that they can better understand what might be causing that data, what other information they might need. As far as specific things, I might let Dr. Boccini talk a little bit more about that.
I really don't have any other specifics, and that's exactly where we are with presenting that data with to the principals. In fact, that was one of our first data meetings, is to present that and allow them opportunity to dig into their own school specific, ask further questions. We did protocols with them about asking further questions and then sharing best practice with one another. So.
Okay, all right.
Dr. Watson was also whispering in my ear that for our counselors in elementary school, this is actually one of their growth measures, one of the things that they're specifically looking to grow in. So they are working together to develop the strategies that they need to help increase that number, because certainly we want all students feeling safe at school.
And was there more detail in the survey to get an idea of what do they not feel safe about? Is it, what are the specific things that they're not feeling safe about?
I'm not remembering exactly what those questions are. We'd be happy to get you the actual questions so that we know that. One of the things I know that just from being an assistant principal in Parkway and working with schools, some of the things we ask are about location, like where in the building do you have, like do you feel safe in your classroom? Do you feel safe on the bus? Do you feel safe in the hallway? Those kinds of things so that we can start to pinpoint where those locations might be. But like I said, I'd be happy to get you the exact questions and have Dr. Tyson prepare that for you.
That'd be great. And then I take it that that same effort will be done in middle school and the high schools as well, correct? Okay. Then my other question with on the trauma-informed care piece, when we're talking about the idea that there's an increase in the need for this with social emotional behaviors, and we're seeing an increase in behavior causing this, how is it monitored and tracked? How do we know that this is happening? As opposed, and over what period of time are you looking at saying that there's an increase in this particular issue, especially at the elementary school? How do we know this?
So the increase isn't directly tied to the trauma. The increase is in the general behavior, and there could be many, many reasons as to why that behavior is happening. And so each case is individual. They're kids, so we don't really know each time. The purpose of the trauma-informed initiative from the state level is to be informed about that possibility. And if we can recognize that what's going on in that student could be an effect of trauma, it better informs the kinds of services and supports that we can give them. It's kind of like being a doctor, where we try to figure out and apply the appropriate intervention or the appropriate work to the kiddos. So it isn't that we're tracking by what is going on, but more so the increase in general.
And I apologize, I probably confused the two issues. I guess I was wondering, how do we track the social emotional issues that are going on in elementary schools? That is it by reporting from a teacher, from a counselor, from incidences that are reported?
It's incidences, either through the discipline reports, and then we also have data that the nurses keep relative to any actual diagnoses that have been made, for example, anxiety or depression, those kinds of things. So the nurses do keep track of that data if they have it from the doctors.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I would say, though, you kind of went through a line of things. It is incidents we're aware of from principals, more serious incidences that we're, wrestling with. So, I mean, there's a whole range of, things we're hearing as well as data over the last probably several years now, and increasingly concerned of our school leaders and our staff, our teachers as well.
The other question I had was surrounding, well, let's stay on social emotional for a moment. This, I guess, is going more into your future direction with that. I see under, this has to do with continued work around social, emotional, and physical well-being, and it talks about the various different things that are being done with that. And on future direction, it talks about the trauma-informed care, but I also just want to bring up the matter of vaping that's going on, and I don't, it's possible that this could get into social emotional issues as to the reasons why students are vaping, feeling the sense that it helps calm them down. There's this pervasive message being given to students, our society, that it's safer than smoking, when in fact nicotine is a huge addiction substance. And we've talked about this in our policies and getting some of that added to our curriculum. But as we look at the social emotional issues of our students, I wonder, if addictive behaviors like doing things like vaping and drugs should enter into our future direction to keep some handle on that, or at least some awareness, put it on the radar that may be involved.
Sure. What I can respond to on that is absolutely that, behaviors manifest in different ways, and clearly, is it possible? It's possible, anything's possible when we really look at the individual child and kind of figure out their story and what's going on, whether we can, and not being physicians or not being, mental health professionals, but we can, perhaps send people in support of those resources to see if there's any connection to that. But certainly, manifestations of behavior come out in a lot of ways. That makes a lot of sense, so thank you.
Okay. The other question I had was the student interviews that are taking place. So the 400 students at random, so how do we know that we're going to get representation from all of our different categories of students? So the gifted students, the IEP students, the homeless students, all of our students, and is 400 enough? How did you come up with that number?
We actually relied on Dr. Tyson, who has sample size estimates. It says if you have 17,000 students, here's the number of students that you need to get an accurate sample of your population. Okay. And then we just used, not to get too boring and technical, but a simple random sample is the kind of sampling we used, and then we took each of those categories. We do need to look more specifically at some of the ones you named, but just looking, for example, at race, ethnicity, free reduced lunch status, IEP status, some of the ones that we frequently use. I actually asked Carter Snow to do the random sample for us. We looked at that, and actually, even on the very first of those three, we had a very close sample to representing our population, all of them within 3% of our actual total of the population. And then we also even looked at schools and saw that we had a almost perfect match to the percent of students from each of our schools. So we are being very careful. Now, what we have to do next is obtain parent consent to do the interview. At that point, we'll have to go back and double check and ensure that we still have an accurate sample of our student population. And this is a process that we'll have to repeat annually to make sure that we get a good sample of our population. So I think you're right to recognize that we want to make sure we have a good sample. We're using our experts internally and Dr. Tyson and Carter Snow to make sure that we do that in a way that's going to be really representative of our whole population.
I think it's a great effort, so thank you very much for
Thank
that.
you.
Let's see, my other question had to do with the character.
Debbie, while you're looking for that, let's come around the table and we'll circle back.
Okay.
Kevin, I really want to give you kudos for that AP scores, AP enrollment going up, because that's a really key for us to grow into college readiness and getting more students ready for the college. However, I have a request to you guys to look at those data by school and see which one are going up, which one are going down, so that we can focus on those schools if they are not, increasing the enrollment. I would also say, while we are introducing all the college level practicals, and let's try to boost the confidence of our students. Let's make sure they are well aware of the practices that are being implemented in the AP courses, so they are not, oftentimes I see students backing out when they hear honors or AP because, they get scared to lose the credit. Let's make sure that we boost their confidence, make sure they understand what, some terminologies are out there that are being used at the college level, and so they don't just, get scared. Let's make sure they are motivated.
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much. I'll also just briefly mention our Equal Opportunity Schools initiative that our high schools have been engaged in over the past year or so to try to increase the representation of underrepresented populations in AP courses. This is our first full year in that program. Now, our high schools are working hard to make sure that they do that, and we'll be continually analyzing that data and looking at that. Through that process, our schools are also really looking at how do we support students who, to your point, might be scared to enter that class, might not feel like they have the preparation to be in that class, might not feel like they belong in that class. What is it that we need to do? I'll give you just one quick example. I know that Dr. H was here earlier from South High, and they're doing AP boot camp in the summer to help prepare those students who might be going into their first AP course or attempting that for the first time, to help them identify what are the skills that I need, what I need to do to be more prepared, how do I make sure that I'm fully ready to engage in this challenge. So thank you for your point, and we'll continue working in that area.
Like another example is, very simple, that I, coming from India and, studying here, plagiarism was one of the things that I never knew. But, let's get them to understand what are those challenges, what are the things, how do you prepare, how do you avoid all those things.
We've got this program that we've been working on for the last year, Equal Opportunity Schools. And, if you'd like to set up a one-on-one meeting with Kevin, he may be able to walk you through that and see some of the work that we've been doing with our high school principals.
Be happy to do that if you're interested. Thanks.
I want to get back to the social, emotional piece. Knowing that there seems to be more students with social, emotional needs than there ever has been, that kind of results in disciplinary issues that are quite severe and unmanageable because of their particular needs. So what's happening at the schools to support these kids and to redirect these behaviors? It's more than just redirecting. I don't know if restorative discipline really makes a difference. You can have an awful lot of interventions, but it doesn't seem to be helping certain kids. But yet they're in our schools, and they should be there. So what are schools doing to support them? What are they doing to support teachers, who have children in their classrooms that require so much of their time that really takes away from the learning of all the other children? But that seems to be a growing issue, and I know a study group's going to be formed to discuss that.
Yeah.
But to me, I think it's kind of a crisis right now, from what I understand at this point. So what's being done?
Just that. Well, the committee and the group that's going to get together and try to talk about what that is. But in the meantime, we do have a team, behavior intervention team, that goes into a school and assists with the situation and assists staff as well as the student, kind of in a crisis situation. That model is being successful. We have one in the district, and so one of the immediate needs that we're going to propose and look at is to grow that model so we can get into schools a little bit more frequently, a little bit more often. So when that team goes in there to assist and help, we're not relying on just one set of folks going in there, but that's what they do. They'll go in, assess the situation, determine where the needs are. They support the staff as well as the student, and then brings the team together kind of with a wraparound, and that gets back to trying to identify what the root causes of the situation. And so we'd really like to grow that. So that will be something that we hope to propose and ask for support with.
But when it gets to the point a child needs psychological services or maybe even psychiatric services, what do we do to help that child and to help everyone around them?
Yeah. Currently, the method is contacting we've even had to send kids to emergency rooms, so we get doctors involved at that point, because it does get to that level where we need to contact medical professionals. And so we have avenues to do that. Of course, working with the parents and getting them in and checked into a medical facility is another avenue that we use as well. So, Chelsea, did you have anything to add?
Are parents generally supportive?
Generally, yes.
When we're trying to work with
At least
children?
that's been my experience, and so I haven't taken a lot of data on that. But my experience has been, yes. So we get a medical professional involved.
Okay, thank you.
I know. Thank you.
I don't have anything.
I'd like to go back to a couple things Debbie was talking about, the 78%. I'm kind of hung up on that number as well, because 78% is great, but it basically means a quarter don't feel safe. One of the things that I noticed in the report is your data suggests 90% of high school students report feeling safe, 86% of middle school students, but the 78 only represents grades 3 through 5. So do we have data on grades K through 2?
No.
Hey, Nathan, come on down, use the microphone. So our audience at home can hear your important points.
So the first very important point was that we don't have any kind of survey that we do grades K through 2 on this. Obviously that could be something we talk about, but it just gets so difficult with kids really understanding. With the other point about the 78%, really there's three options. There's yes, basically yes, I feel safe, no, I don't feel safe, and don't know. So it is possible, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that don't know, sometimes the kids, for whatever reason, they just don't know how to answer that or what have you. So it's not necessarily that they don't feel safe. It's either they don't feel safe or they don't know.
Okay. And I understand that, and that may very well be. It would be helpful to be able to drill down a little farther and find out if that truly is the case, and I hope it is. But to me, the thing that stands out is that we have a downward trend that it shows that potentially our youngest students are the ones that feel the least safe.
Yeah, and I think we all totally agree that it should be 100% feel safe. I mean, that's absolutely where we should be with it.
Yeah.
And then just to follow up really quickly, sorry, not that I have the mic. In terms of, Kevin was exactly right about middle school and asking about location, different things like that. Also, we ask at the end, with some of those surveys just for general open comments. And a lot of times that might be where they'll ask, give specific answers about their safety and where they feel safe or don't feel safe. So sometimes reading all of those comments, though, that takes a while because we give the survey to so many students in Parkway. So, but, if you're up for that, we do have that data.
And I just add one more thing, or ask one more question. That 78, whichever number we're talking about, 78 or the 86 or the 90, I know that's representative of all of Parkway. Do we have data that shows any particular buildings that have significant departures from that median? And if so, are we addressing those good or bad? Are we looking at schools that, maybe 10 points above that and saying, what are they doing right, if there is something they're doing right? Or if the opposite is true, is there something that we need to focus on more at a particular school?
Yeah, for sure. We mentioned earlier that through the data meetings, each principal has their own, and so we've compared. So each of the buildings get their data, and they get to compare to the district average, and then they talk openly among themselves about, hey, what are you doing? What's going on over there? Also, help me if I'm wrong, Nathan, but each of the counselors do have identifiers for the students so they know who the kiddos are as well. So that's really important too, so they can identify any kids that maybe they need to talk to. But I will say we did see and have a lot of discussion about this I don't know, and you're talking about 3rd through 5th grade students who taking surveys and making sure that they're understanding the questions. So I think those are all conversations that we have around the data as well during that data meeting. But to answer your question, yeah, we do have it by school and it is discussed.
Okay. And are we looking at increasing the number of students that we sample? Because if we're talking about 400 students total, that's really only what?
Two different things. The climate survey goes to everybody.
Yes, the climate survey is a broad, it's a census survey. It goes to all of our students. With the 400 students, that's our Goal 1 interviews where we're asking specifically about Goal 1 questions.
Yeah, okay.
I just want to say, I think it's wonderful that you guys board members are so concerned about safety, but as you think about all the factors that were talked about, there may be a lot of students, when you think about trauma, who really, and that's why, as Gina tried to, I think, explain well, is there's a lot of students that are affected by trauma and can't learn, and that could be then some of these factors of do they feel safe, because that safety may have something to do with their home environment or other environments. So, it's a tough one, and we are actually trying to drill down and get our principals and our staffs to look more deeply. But I
But
think...
this specifically was safe at school, though, right?
Right, but I
Wasn't
mean,
that the
but I'm
question?
saying that the elementary mind,
Yeah.
isn't going to say, how do I feel today? I mean, if you think about it, when you're asked a question, we, as adults, may think, but I'm going to say right now, what's happened to me today at recess or lunchtime, if I was criticized or I'm not feeling real well. So I mean, that's all part of digging down. And I think it's great we're having this discussion, because absolutely we want every kid to, to feel safe. But there may be so many factors going on in that child's life, both at school and at home.
Okay.
Thank you.
The suicide awareness, I think I remember that it was counselors and social workers that were getting, that were included in the protocol to help identify students at risk for suicide. Is that right? So teachers, I think, know students best. So why would they not be included in the protocol?
Come on down. What I can tell you about the teachers, when that model policy comes forward, it addresses specifically training for the teachers and all staff. So that will be absolutely coming.
Right, because I mean,
For sure.
especially at the elementary level when they're with them
Oh my goodness, yes.
all day long.
Yeah. So our first step was to build that protocol, which if you have further questions about the protocol, Erin can answer. But definitely the training goes to all staff, and that will be coming when we propose the policy to y'all.
Erin, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, it's called gatekeeper training, which is what we would do for all certified staff because of what you said. And so that will happen, we're hoping to pair it in the first few months of school. And then the more in-depth or deep dive, as they say, will be for actually counselors, social workers, school nurses, and our school psychologists as well, because we feel that all of those people would be well-trained to be giving a screening or responding to a student who is having suicidal ideation.
Okay, thank you. Gina, this one's for you too. The Oral Health Collaboration Steering Committee. Who, I think you said it's stakeholders, so who might that be?
So we had people from administration. Robin, you want to come on down? And Robin also invited some community members and some community support services, and she'll talk a little bit more about that.
Give Kids a Smile.
So Give Kids a Smile is a program that we participate in, and we actually did invite the dentist who coordinates that program to our steering committee, but he wasn't able to come. But we had a representative from a Medicaid HMO provider. We had representatives from Comtree, which is a FQHC, a federally qualified health center that currently has a school-based health center in Fox School District.
Are they the ones that spoke to us at that Ed Plus meeting that we had at Central High? They had an in-house dental.
I'm sorry, what was
They had an in-house dental clinic.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
yes,
yeah.
last spring, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
right.
Yes.
And we had a representative from the health department. We had the state school nurse consultant with us. So it was, and then several administrators, a group of school nurses who are really passionate about this. So the end product has been that we have signed an MOU with Comtree, the same FQHC, to develop kind of in a long-term way, bringing oral health services into our elementary schools. And we're starting with a pilot project in 3 elementary schools this spring with doing screening and sealants, and possibly some intervention at their site in Fox. So.
Okay, so it's not like a mobile.
It is mobile, right. So they would bring their equipment into the school. It's mobile.
They would bring their equipment, so it's not like you're going out to a van or doing it.
Right.
So what about the pay for that? I mean, who?
So the screening project that for this spring is paid through a combination of Medicaid reimbursement and state monies. So this is a project that the state supports. So there's actually no out-of-pocket expense for any Parkway parent. As we look long-term to possibly bringing in cleaning, screening, sealants, remediation services, those would be billed through insurance, particularly Medicaid. For families that did not have insurance, didn't qualify for Medicaid or didn't have insurance, there would be the opportunity for a sliding scale for fees, and we're also exploring how we as a school district could help support families that find that sliding scale fee a barrier. So that's a work in progress.
Okay.
And I'll bring more information about this in the future, I promise.
Okay. And then, thank you, Alvin. And then another one for Gina. Who is providing the trauma-informed care training?
Currently, for our new educators, that would be 2 individuals that have gone through the trauma-informed training. That was Amy Birkencoats, still here. They are staff members who went through the learning collaborative that I mentioned before, and so they had enough information to do the awareness piece, and so they do that in the summer. 2 staff members that do it in the summer, and that's how we were able to put that in place.
Okay, thanks. And then my last question's for Kevin, and that's who's going to conduct the interviews for the student interviews?
Good question. We're reaching out to our steering committee, and then we're trying to pull together a small group of school leaders, whether that be administrators, instructional coaches, progress monitoring coaches, but we also want to involve some members of our steering committee in that work as well.
So how long do you think an average interview would take?
So we went out and did about a half dozen just sort of trial balloon interviews. At the end of last year, we interviewed actually just staff member children of staff, not staff member children.
I understand.
We don't have staff member children. We have children of staff members. So for example, Susan Irby Hawkinson interviewed my daughter. I interviewed the son of one of our instructional coaches. We found those took about 20 minutes on average.
Okay, great. Thank you. Debbie, we'll go back to you.
Sure. Okay, so my last question, then a comment. How do we know the restorative practices is working? What do you do to monitor that, to see that this is being effective? I'm looking at Michael.
He's just
I know. I'm going to let our restorative practices expert discuss it.
It's a good question. Right now, that's anecdotal, and it's through conversations. I was talking with an elementary principal. I had been at Piermont observing a teacher who had gone through the summer training, and Joe Hawkinson had mentioned, he says, one thing he's noticed is that that teacher is calling him less often to come intervene or deal with student issues. So one of the things I'm thinking about in terms of, now that we're kind of in year 2 of this, the teachers who have, with Fidelity, are really practicing a restorative approach in their classroom. We want to start possibly pulling their discipline data to see if there are fewer referrals from those teachers who are doing it more often. Our approach through our training is proactive community building and not to use it as a response to behavior. So the teachers are using it to build community, to talk about issues, and also as a teaching tool. And our hope is that as they embed it more in that format, it'll be easier for them to use it to address classroom behavior because the students will already be familiar with the circle process from a proactive approach.
Okay. Thank you. And then my last question was on the character education guide. Is that going to be online? Is that something that's online, or
Our guide currently is online.
Okay, and
our current guide is online, and so the tool that they're working on is for schools to use. It's specifically for their own growth and development. Whenever schools, the 9 commitments are a lot of commitments, and so tackling all 9 at the same time is really not very feasible. And so as they move through the stages of each of the commitments, what they'll set up is sort of a leveled approach. Like if you're just starting out, these are really good practices, and so that helps a school a little bit better identify some good practices. And so really, it's a tool for them to continue their growth. So, for example, we do have several national schools of character. Can they continue to grow? Of course they can. They get feedback from that process that says, oh, here's some other areas that you can grow, and then also our tool will do the same for them.
Okay. And I'm very happy to see the cooperative going on between Parkway and Rockwood for the high school area. I think that was one of our gaps that we had in getting character ed into high school. So I'm really pleased to see that effort is going to be moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Thank you, everybody.
Could I just have Kevin just respond to this statement?
Yes.
Goal 1, of course, now includes, kind of a combination of really what was Goal 1, 2, and 3 before. And I just don't want to end this because we spend so much time on the social emotional side, which is good, and the concerns about safety. But Kevin, we still are going to really monitor the traditional pieces of achievement, aren't we?
They will never go away. So we are treating them almost like in corporate America, what they call key performance indicators. So there are a set of things that we're still going to monitor on an ongoing basis, things like our ACT score, our AP participation, our graduation rate, things that we would do regardless of what our strategic plan calls for, things that every school district has to monitor regardless of their mission. And that really is what the 6 measurable objective speaks to, is that particular piece. The 5 that precede that are still up there on the screen are really mission specific, and those would change with any changes to our mission, to our strategic plan. But regardless of what those are, the answer is yes. We're going to continue to monitor those key performance indicators, make sure those are the kinds of things that are measured on sort of the state accreditation system, the things that we know to be a successful organization that we have to continue to do. So thank you, Dr. Murray, for bringing that up. Yes, we'll always continue to monitor those things so that they don't get lost.
And just so the board knows, our data meetings usually are 50-50, 50 academic time on data, and 50 looking at things that would be indicators of behavior, attendance, or social emotional surveys, climate surveys, and that type of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tandy, you're up 13.02. Paul's going to come talk to us about the demographic study and the bond update.
Well, thank you, President Feldman, and good evening. So tonight, I'd like to present to you some high-level key findings from the Demographics and Enrollment Study, which was recently completed for us, and also kind of do a little bit of a quick reminder of kind of how it fits into the planning. What do I point to? Was it turned off? Sorry, it was turned off. So how it fits in with our bond planning, and that's sort of one of the main reasons why we wanted to have this study done at this time. So I'm going to go over a little bit about the background and how it fits into the bond planning, and then remind you of kind of the purpose and scope of the study, a few of the key findings, and then those kind of the impact of those major findings on our decision making in terms of particularly the bond for November, but also a little bit beyond that. This slide's an old slide. You've seen it before, but I use this as a kind of a reminder of kind of the background. We have about a 10-year facilities planning cycle that we've done for the past, actually more than 30 years. This slide shows about the past 30 years, but we typically do a bond about every 4 to 5 years, and the 10-year planning cycle is broken up between 2 different bond issues, and typically the first phase is a request for a tax increase to the debt service levy, and then the second bond, phase 2, comes back as a no tax. And so, as you can see, we are at that phase 2 of the current cycle. The last bond was in 2014. As you may recall, that included an increase to the debt service tax rate. The one, if you approved to put on the ballot in November, would be a no tax increase. And again, for bond planning, where we begin is with that facility condition index and the list of those major systems that our facilities team identifies at each building that may be on the radar for repair or replacement in the next 4 to 5 years, so for the next bond. That's kind of the baseline. Those are kind of the not fun stuff. It's things like HVACs and roofs and carpet and windows and things like that. And then we began this past year with input from our principals and leaders in the buildings, and then parents and staff. We've been getting feedback through Project Parkway and through the steering committee. Additionally, we have the four quarterly meetings, and the last two for the year are February 12th and April 16th. So those will continue the community dialogue around it. We will do one more thought exchange. We'll start that right after the February 12th meeting. And then we will also do a community random telephone survey of the broader community to kind of gauge their opinions and feelings on the priorities for the bond. Okay, so for the demographic study itself, we asked the firm that conducted it to evaluate our enrollment trends and kind of look at future areas where we might be seeing growth in enrollment or perhaps decline. And that will obviously assist us with our planning, our long-range planning. And we have our own projections, but as Dr. Marty mentioned this morning, it's always a good idea every so often to get an independent look at what someone else thinks about in terms of the future for the district in terms of demographics and enrollment. And so tonight I want to compare a little bit about what they found and compare it with what our projections show. The company we use is called Business Information Systems. This is kind of their wheelhouse. They do demographic studies for school districts around the country. We've used them previously. We actually used them for an early childhood study a few years back and come highly recommended. These are some of the sources that they used in the study. And they did use live birth data from the county health department. So I'm going to go briefly with some interesting things that you might be curious about what we learned about our community, and then look at a little bit on some of the enrollment trends and future projections. So starting with the community. The BSI tells us they believe the resident population in Parkway is going to rise only slightly in the next decade. It's very flat, and I have another chart in a minute to show you that. The community is mature, and you're not seeing a lot of change in just the overall population. Now, this includes the entire Parkway community. The growth that you are seeing in age groups is in the older age groups, not in families with school-age children. And in the fact, over the next 10 years, they predict that the number of school-age children is going to actually decrease in the next 5 years and then perhaps start trending back up. This is a slide that shows the total population in Parkway, starting back with 1990, and in the middle is 2016, roughly current day, and then you can see what they project for out 10 more years to 2026. Even though, for example, 1990, it looks like that bar has changed a lot. If you look at that y-axis on the left, it's 1,000 increments, and so actually, it really hasn't changed much in quite a long time in Parkway. And as you can see, for the next 10 years, they show it only increasing just very slightly from a statistical standpoint. About 143,000 people. Here are the number of school-age children, ages 5 through 17. You can see in 2016, 20,795, and you can see they project that to decline over the next 5 years and then start to come back up just slightly, but still very flat. Now, this is a slide, and I apologize for those in the room that some of these slides are going to be kind of busy, and you may not be able to see them, but this shows different age groups along the bottom in the Parkway community. Now, this is all the total population, and this is the percent change in the total population among those age groups between 2000 and 2010. So this is census data from 2000, 2010. We won't have another one for about 3 more years, but this is good data. And what it shows you is in the red, if it's in the red, it means in that age group, they actually saw a decline among that age group over that period of time, whereas in the green, you saw an increase. For this slide, I only started with age 30 and moved up, but what I can tell you is below 30, it was also in the red, almost in every age group. But if you look in green, the largest increase is percentage-wise at the far right, so 80 and above. So, we see that, we kind of know it, but our community is mature. And when you think about that 80 and above, if this community, the most of our homes, which I'll show you in a slide in a minute, were built in the late 60s, early 70s. If you moved here in 1970, well, that was 47 years ago. And if you were 30 years old when you moved here, you're in your upper 70s. And so we know this is a community where people moved to in a fairly short window in that time of history. It built out very quickly. It's a good place to live, and families have stayed, and the community continues to mature, and that's why you're seeing some of the data you're seeing. At the same time, we do know that at some point that's going to turn over and regreen, if you will, The demographer told us, he said, I know of no statistical way to predict regreening. It just, when it happens, it happens. So we could be seeing some of that now. We've had 4 years of continuous enrollment increase after, 15 years or so of slight decline, and a four-year consecutive increase. What does that mean? He didn't know what that meant, to be honest. He said it's hard to know what that means. In terms of income, his findings, not surprisingly, we live in a relatively affluent population. If you look at all of the the households filing jointly, almost 60% earn over $100,000 a year. 36% of those earn between $100,000 and $200,000, and a little over 1 out of 5 joint filers earn over $200,000. This slide, I apologize for those of you, it's hard to read, but the two largest sections obviously are the 100 and 200,000 group, and then the red is 75 to 100, and then the orange is 50 to 75, and the yellow and blue are below 50. Again, these are household joint filers. In terms of homes, I briefly mentioned that a moment ago. About 61% of homes, of all homes in this district, were built between 1961 and 1980. In fact, since 2000, only about 6% of all the homes have been built. And our schools are in the same boat. If you look at the average age of a Parkway school, it's getting to be right around 50 years old. Most of our schools were built around 1968 to 72, 73, in that time frame as the community just really took off. Most of our students in Parkway, according to the demographer, live in homes greater than 2,000 square feet. We also have approximately 12% of our students who currently live in apartments. Interestingly, almost 2/3 of all homes in Parkway, 64%, have only 1 or 2 people living in them. So 37% have 2 people, and 27% only have 1. So for sure, we have 27% of homes that don't have students or kids of school age, and probably a good chunk of the 37% don't either. So what this slide would tell you, if you could read it, and by the way, these slides are all online, so if anybody would like to get those there on the website. But this shows you from 1900 at the top of the screen to current day, when all the homes in Parkway were built. And what I tried to show you there in the yellow line is basically there's this bubble right around 60s and 70s up to, maybe up to 1990, 85, 90, where the vast majority of homes were built. And after that, it's been pretty built out. I mean, we do see some new housing, little smaller areas going in, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small percentage-wise. In terms of home values, the median home value for Parkway students, okay, again, the median, not the average, but the median is $257,750. If you look at all the home sales in Parkway last year, the average sale price was $358,090. The number of homes sold in the last 4 years, interestingly, and the sales prices have increased at a pretty good clip. So almost 20% increase in homes turning over in the last 4 years. And I'm going to show you how that compares to a few neighboring districts. And the sales price has increased almost 15%. So that outpaces CPI. So those are good numbers. This is how those numbers compare. In the blue in the bottom are some neighboring school districts. Probably the best ones to compare are those are of similar size. At the top is Francis Howell, and then down just a few below us is Rockwood. And so if you can see in the number of homes sold, for example, in Parkway in 2013, 1,537 homes versus 1,827 in 2016. And then you can see how that compares. So that's about a 19% increase in Parkway. If you look at Francis Howell, they've had about a 10.6% increase in the number of homes. And then look at Rockwood, a 7.3 in terms of the number of homes. So we're seeing percentage-wise a higher percentage of homes turning over. Does that contribute partially to the, enrollment changes and some of these neighborhoods turning over? The demographer could not say, but it is a data point I think that's worth mentioning. If you look at the average sale prices, again, I mentioned the Parkway's average last year was about $358,000. You can see how that fares with some neighboring school districts. And then the percent increase, if you look on the far right, most of our neighboring school districts are seeing good increases in those sale prices. So those are all good things for the economy. About 15% increase for Parkway. That compares with Francis Howell had about a 17% increase, and then Rockwood about a 10.5. Private and parochial schools. Here's a quote from the report that I thought was interesting. So again, they do this sort of study, all over the place, and for them to see, and I think that was like 93 private and parochial schools within about a 4-mile radius of the district center. So what does that mean? Oh, and here's sort of a geographic depiction of where those are. If it's in the red or orange, that means there's a higher concentration of private or parochial schools. Yellow and green are sort of in the middle, and then the areas where a lower concentration of private and parochial are in the blue and purple. So sort of in that central corridor of the school district. And what does that mean? Well, to them, again, they said they've never seen such a high concentration. That indicates a tremendous competition for pre-K-12 in this market. And in 2010, from the census data, and we knew this, almost a third in 2010, almost a third of all the school-age students attended a non-public school. So that's a lot of students. In fact, it's about twice the state average, which is 16%. Not surprising, a fairly affluent community, a lot of opportunity for private and parochial choices. But interesting also, by 2016, that percentage choosing non-public has decreased down to about 22%. So not sure why that is. You could speculate it's the economy. It's hard to say, but we have somewhere about one out of 5 choosing a non-public. So overall, and this is again the big picture enrollment in Parkway, overall they predict that the overall enrollment is going to decline over the next 5 years, and the reasoning for that are the following. The desegregation program, as you know, is phasing out. Now, we will continue to accept siblings of currently enrolled students for several years, but beginning with 23-24, then we will stop accepting new students. And so those that are enrolled as of that year will continue out throughout the duration of their high school experience if they choose to. But we know for sure those numbers are going to be declining, and so that's one of the factors that one of the rationales for why he says our enrollment's going to decline. Also, as we mentioned, fairly aging community with little new construction, very static population, and then that competition we talked about. So his projections are really based on data points, and as I'll get to here in just a moment, he really doesn't look at trend predictions based on a trend model, and actually the trend model is what we use, and so I'll kind of show some how that compares. This slide shows their projections, sort of high, medium, and low projections for Parkway in terms of the next 10 years enrollment. And this is just resident students. This does not take into account students from the city of St. Louis. And they kind of do that fan there, so you can look at, well, it could go anywhere from here at the high end to maybe here at the low end. And so anywhere from, a slight increase to kind of flat to a slight decrease. Now, if you factor in resident with VST, with the VST, as we know, we're declining, then here's their numbers, high, medium, and low. So you can see we're at 17,610. If you look at the sort of the medium projection, he's projecting 16,902, so about 700 or so student decline, if you look at just kind of the medium projection. Now, I would like to take that median projection, the 16,902, and then compare that with Parkway's enrollment projections, which again is based on a trend model. And in this slide, the red is the Parkway projection over the next 5 years versus their kind of middle-of-the-road projection. So 16,902 compared with 17,868, so a little under 1,000. That may sound like a lot, and maybe on the slide it may look like it, but The data folks have reminded me that's really statistically not a huge difference, and in fact, if you break up 900 or so students by 30 buildings, it's maybe 30 students per building, so it's not a huge difference. I think what it tells us is that both projections are saying it's relatively flat. If it's going to decline, it's not going to decline a lot. If it's going to increase, it's not going to increase a lot. Overall, you will have pockets here and there where you will see some areas that are probably, some problem areas that we need to address. But overall, I think we should feel confident that our numbers are pretty much on track. He actually did do, and this is what this is, he actually did do one slide where he said, well, if I did do the trend model, he said, which I don't do, but if I did, it would be this top blue line that I've pointed the arrow to. So he's admitted if I use a trend model, I'm showing you going up a little bit. So I think it helps. I think it's, what I say overall is it's validating kind of what we thought. There's a little difference, but it's kind of like the overall population. It's not changing dramatically, at least in the next 5 years overall. When we look at high school attendance zones, so overall, they project that the central, south, and west areas overall will actually decrease in enrollment in the next 5 years, whereas the north area will increase in the next 5 years. Now, our estimates suggest that in the central area, it's going to be relatively flat. We will have a decrease in the south, but in the north and the west areas, we indicate overall both north and west would be increasing. So it's just important to kind of throw those up there so you can kind of see how they compare. And we have all the detail in the detail report so you can see by building how that plays out. I do want to mention a few specific areas. I know that tonight was kind of a high level. But I do want to mention a few important areas for impacts for planning. So a few areas where their projections and ours were in line that are, and I didn't pick them all, I just picked a few that I thought were important. One is McKelvey. So we know McKelvey's enrollment has been increasing. We've added some modular learning units, or whatever the official term for trailers is. So we've done that, but that's not what we want to do long term. And so this validated that it's going to increase. And so we know we can't have 700 students at an elementary school. That's bigger than one of our middle schools. And so we've already had on the plan for the bond proposal to do something to address that, perhaps to use repurpose ISC to add classroom space that we could utilize for McKelvey, and various options are being discussed through Project Parkway, but I think we can feel confident that that is a good approach, a good strategy, because that's going to happen. That enrollment is going to continue to increase. River Bend, that enrollment, both our projections and theirs indicate it's going to increase. Now, why is that significant? Well, if you remember, River Bend was around 250 students not too long ago, and when we redrew the boundary lines in the north, we shifted some students down to produce some of the overcutting in the north. But River Bend's at a point where they're probably not going to be able to take anymore. In fact, it's not a huge school as it is, and they're getting kind of big, so we have to watch that. Sorrento in the south area, both our projections and theirs indicate that Sorrento is going to continue to decrease. Why is that important? Kind of like River Bend used to be. They're in the 200s. So there's some underutilization of space that we need to be thinking of and taking into account of how better could we utilize that space. And then a couple of key areas where we disagree. And again, these are some important areas, and that is mainly the west, Henry and West Middle, both. In Henry and West Middle, we project those numbers are going to increase, and they're already high, and they project actually that they're going to be decreasing. Well, what does that mean? I don't know. I think it means we have to really closely watch that. I think we can feel confident in the McKelvey strategies we have in the bond, but we just need to really closely watch that to see where that's going to go. So in summary, as we mentioned, Parkway mature, the community is mature, very little new construction, minimal change in the population, good home sales, CPI increases are good, increasing over CPI. We're going to lose students from the city, and that's a definite. Again, like I said, McKelvey, that's a validation of work there that needs to be addressed in these other areas that we need to just kind of watch. That is a super high level summary. Any questions that you might have?
When you go back out for your thought exchange in February, what's the period of time that's going to take place?
So the thought exchange we will kind of lead into it that night at Project Parkway. We'll explain the questions that we're going to ask. We're still working on kind of what we think we need to ask from the community. But that will be essentially between the February and April meeting is when that will happen. The way thought exchange works, it takes several weeks to get all the thoughts and then the stars in there, but then it takes them a fair amount of time to analyze all that data because it's a lot of reading and analysis and that they have to do. So it takes them a little while. But we will have that prior to the April meeting to inform our work that night. Because after April, we hope to be in a point to reach some fairly good consensus to be able to come to you with whatever has been brought forward. And we will also have the results of the telephone survey from the broader community. The results of those will be available at the Project Parkway meeting. And actually, we plan, if you would want, you could actually have those at a board meeting prior to that. They should be available if you would want it prior to the Project Parkway meeting. That Dr. Wright, who does that, he would be willing to come here if you want him to present those findings.
Paul, how does Rod do a phone survey in 2018 when people don't really have phones or don't answer them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we asked him. I've asked him that twice. Bottom line is, they are calling a significant number of cell numbers now. That the cell numbers are now available to them, and he went into the explanation of how they get them. But they're able to get cell numbers even if it's not a 314 or 636 area code because it's based, I think, on where the bill is. They get that somehow through the billing thing. Yeah,
that's great to know.
Yeah, and
that has really changed.
And I predict that is going to continue to evolve in the coming years. But he still says, and we've seen this in Parkway over the years, that those surveys are very accurate. We'll see. He still claims that they're still right on. The last survey we did in 2014, if you remember, the respondents really skewed on the more mature end. And there were fewer cell phones being called at that time. So you might imagine that's why. More of them have landlines. More of them might be ready to answer a phone call. But now it's actually the majority of the calls that are being outbound are actually to cell numbers. So I was glad to hear that.
Right.
We'll see.
I would not have had confidence in a phone survey if it was just going to landlines.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that they're able to do that.
My guess is that the respondents are still going to skew on the mature side in terms of age, just because of what we anecdotally know about people's behaviors answering phones and completing surveys. This is about a 10 to 12 minute survey, so for a millennial, that's like a decade.
It's not worth their time.
But we need a certain number of questions to be able to. The process is important about how they do their surveys.
So what about the growth in senior housing?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Wherever you look, there's new senior housing being built. So
and I think, and that's what you were saying, is the number of mature residents is going up, but school-age kids are going down. I thought that would have a correlation.
I'm thinking, for instance, of that area over by Target and Whole Foods.
Clayton, yeah.
Over there, there's plenty of new senior housing. And, there's plenty of residential housing with children going to Henry. But also, is our senior housing population growing at a really quick rate?
And I don't recall in the study if he broke out senior housing development.
Could that be, Paul, could that be why 64% of the people, one or two, maybe that wasn't distinguished about, single family. It was just
that live in, that have one or two, and also the
I don't know, just guessing.
So
like
we can clarify
the
with
empty
him.
nesters are now 1 and 2 residents because my son lives in Springfield. So you've got a lot of population with just one.
I think we can clarify from Preston how that broke out, and did some of that include essentially senior living condominium type?
Yeah.
'Cause you're right, there's a lot.
Well, even that other one on Clayton and Henry is still fairly new. It's not that old. And then
Right,
you've
it's
got the
brand
newest one by Schnucks. Yeah, a lot.
So, my other question is, the point that the demographer said about you can't estimate when a neighborhood's going to be green, that is such a critical statement for our planning purposes, because eventually these people that are original owners in these homes, in my neighborhood, I see them, they're moving to senior housing. and their younger families that are coming in. And you may not be able, a demographer may not be able to pinpoint that, but in logic, you can tell that's happening.
Yes, but and Patty and Paul, correct me, but we talked a lot about that. And his statement is, Beth and Buddy Feldman, you're ready to move. Are you going to maybe stay as long as you can and die there? Or are you going to sell the home or give the home to your child?
We're gonna die in
your
our-
children.
in our house.
So you can't predict that, because he was saying that, there's all kinds of ways that,
Yeah.
a lot of people stay as long as they can, and then something happens, and then maybe the home even stays vacant for a while, or a relative lives in there, or takes care of it. So he was pretty clear that nobody can.
He is a super data person, and his answer is based on data. I can't tell you precisely, but believe me, I personally, I know, was very frustrated with that answer, because that's part of what I was hoping somebody like him, through all of his work, would be able to identify.
But logically speaking, if the industry is building senior housing like crazy, there's got to be a demand for it, and where are they coming from? And don't people want to stay in the same general vicinity when they move from their original homes into senior living?
Plus, they're moving closer to family members that already live in that area.
Seems like he did give us an example of one community where they actually went in and did a count, by home analysis of, okay, who moved in and who moved out, you know what I mean? But you got to, and his point was, you've got to kind of do that level of analysis before you could really try to predict what's going to happen.
He did state that could be possibly, I don't want to call it his margin of error, but that is one of the things that he did not deeply consider when he was doing the analysis. So the population turnover could be a mechanism that, our district may grow probably closer to Nathan's projections than to his. So he did, account for that kind of as a clarifying statement or caveat.
Yep.
Was he able to uncover any additional construction that might be going on in the next couple of years? No?
No, he did identify in the report a few properties that were classed differently than what he suspected. He invited himself as a resource so that myself and my team could learn how to download parcel information from St. Louis County. So we actually took him up on that opportunity, I think it was 2 days ago, so that would have been Monday. And from the file that we downloaded with him, we actually were able to do some initial comparisons ourselves. So I think it's going to provide us additional mechanisms to get additional information too. As you know, we do kind of track the larger developments and ensure that it's on our new construction. It's almost impossible for us to track each new home as it's built, but that will certainly knowing how to download the parcel information will help us in that endeavor.
Okay. Debbie, you look like you have a question.
I do, but I wanted to respect Paul. It looked like he had some additional information he wanted to know.
The one comment was, I forget the exact statistics, but he did say that their projections in terms of a new home or condominium or so forth, they have these projections about, for every, one, it's at 0.2 students or whatever. He did say that number has actually been declining, and in the industry trend, and I forget, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the takeaway from me was homes are yielding fewer students today than what they did in the past in their models. So, and he did do some analysis of the one subdivision you mentioned, and it's in Maryland Oaks. It doesn't, in his estimation, doesn't yield as many students as you might think.
And I appreciate your question about it, because that was one of my questions as well. So that was good discussion to have about that single-family home. Because around me, we have 4 widows that each live in their own home, right across the street from me and next door to me. So, and it's unfortunate, but they're staying in their home as long as they can. But I too see that increased construction of multifamily and senior housing things. But one of my other questions had to do with that age cohort slide that shows, and the remarks about our aging population in Parkway. Is that consistent with what's occurring over the entire United States? Because we know that that we have an aging population. So are we different? Are we so far different from the aging population across the United States? Or
I'm pretty sure in the text of that section, he does touch on that a little bit. If memory serves, he did look at that, and I think ours is aging a little more dramatically than the national average.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I was wondering on the matter pertaining to the private versus and parochial schools that we're competing against, it would be interesting to know if that's at the elementary, the middle school, or the high school levels.
So we actually do look at that, and we can look at the numbers for you, because we can see, for example, in any given time period, how many students left Parkway for a non-public, and what school and where did they go.
Yeah.
Our folks and the registrars and so forth, they keep good data on that. And then on the flip side, if we have one coming in, where are they coming in from? Is it just from another state and a public, or is it a private or parochial? And we have that. And in the recent years, what you find is it's either a wash, or we're actually slightly on the positive side in terms of gaining more than we're losing. And that is consistent with that slide where you saw in the last 6 years, you've seen, a somewhat of a decline in the choice of, at least in Parkway now, just in Parkway.
But is that change occurring at the elementary level or at the high school level? It's because it seems, I mean, I have my own speculations, but what's...
Yeah, I don't know that we didn't ask that, did we? We could probably find it, though.
I'm just wondering if that's going, if that has a bearing on our projections.
We could get that
in
data because we
elementary,
have that,
middle,
so
and
we
high.
could show by, by level how that breaks down. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, thanks.
Debbie, I'd like to respond to your, as that happened all over the country. I would guess that, Parkway, it's a fluent community, so people that are here stay here. They like the community, and there's not a lot of turnover, and it's hard to buy a home in Parkway unless you have a decent income. I will contrast that. I've been spending some time with my son in Johnson County, Kansas. As you know, he's moved there. And we've been driving around when I go there, and every subdivision, he bought a home that was built in 2005, for example, and I was talking to one of his neighbors, and there's like a whole area that, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was farmland. So, and everything's new. The shop strip malls. I mean, it was like Parkway probably was in the 60s and 70s. And so just amazing. There's nothing old there. It's everything from the homes to the shopping to the malls to the businesses are just new. So I think there's pockets. And I think Johnson County is one of the fastest growing areas in the country outside on the Kansas side. So it is happening some places. But I think there is more communities like us, that are maturing, certainly. Now, you go out to Wentzville, they'd be like a Johnson County because they can't keep up buildings. So, I mean, there are certainly areas here in our area. I think St. Charles County in a whole.
I forgot to mention one thing, and I wanted to give a shout out for Dr. Tyson. When I went back to the fall enrollment report, the 5-year projections from the fall of 2012, Nathan's projections indicated we were going to see a turn, and it was going to start turning up. So when you look at this 17,610 in 2017-18, I forget his number, but it was just within 150, 200 students of that. And bigger than that, he predicted the swing coming up to the increase, which is, I don't know how he does it, but he did predict that. And so shout out to him because he was right on. And, he uses a little bit of a different model than what this person uses, but he's done a good job for us.
Right?
What's that?
His crystal ball is just great.
That's right. His crystal ball is just right.
Thank you, Paul, Patty,
Thank you.
Nathan. All right, everybody's favorite thing to discuss. Amy Joyce, we're going to talk about the calendar.
Good evening. You know it's my favorite.
I know. All of us.
It's our
don't we love the
favorite.
calendar?
Yeah. Well, good evening, and I'm here to have a work session for the proposed 2019-2020 school calendar and teacher work calendar. So a committee meets that is comprised of members of Teachers Association, as well as administration, and we have various groups represented, all levels, elementary, middle, high school, professional development, TLA, communications. And there are several things that we consider when we develop the school calendar. We look at the DESE guidelines for the calendar, student attendance. We need to look at our own board policies and the contract that we have with our Teachers Association. We also look at the calendar survey that was conducted with our community 2 years ago. And then there are other considerations, for example, religious holidays, paid holidays, when our testing window is, MAP testing, AP testing, and so forth. We also look at when we would like for our staff to come back, our new teachers, and then we also look at some of our, like the election cycle, whether or not we need to be in session. So those are all of the items that we consider. We also look at neighboring school districts, which is a priority for when they have their breaks. And one of our neighbors does have the same spring break as ours. I won't mention the neighbor, but we compare ourselves to them quite a bit. So in the proposed calendar, we have 177 total student attendance days. We also have identified the trimesters. The first trimester has 61 days, second trimester 55, and third trimester 61. And then we also had to change our middle schools from trimesters to semesters. So in the first semester for middle and high, we have 87 days, and then 90 in second semester. We also have 191 teacher contract days that we need to have identified in the calendar. So as you can see on the proposed calendar, we have a start date for students on August the 13th, and the end date is May 21st. And we also have a 2-week break during the winter, and of course we have our 5-day spring break in March. So at this time, I will open it up for questions, and if there's any feedback that I can take back to the committee, I would be more than happy to do so. So tonight is a work session, and then after this evening, we'll go back to the committee for any revisions or consideration. We will also share this with our community PTO leadership team, and then we will bring back another version if we make changes to seek board approval in February.
Amy, the thing that jumps right out at me is that you've changed the late start Wednesdays to the end of the month versus the beginning of the month.
Yes, we did do that. Kevin Beckner. Kevin, did you do that?
I did not do that. No, I was not on the calendar committee at that time.
Did I sound nice when I said that?
Yes, it was great. And thank you for recognizing that. I actually asked the same thing because I was new to this committee this year, and the conversation around that had been we actually lose a lot of those first Mondays or have them immediately after we return from a break. So for example, if we come back from winter break, on a Tuesday, and then the first Wednesday of the month is, right there, well, that seems odd that we just brought kids back and now all of a sudden so the way the calendar fell, it made a lot more sense to have those that last Wednesday of the month and the first Wednesday of the month, just in terms of consistency for students and the dates on which those fell.
Take note, communications department. Oh, we've got a happy school board candidate over there. She likes that.
Don't leave.
And Pat, Amy, generally, I think in the past, we've had the Friday prior to spring break as a records day, so no students, and giving us a longer spring break.
This is the first year we've been there.
Okay.
Yeah, this year we do not, and I I think it was just a matter of where everything fell, and so they decided to move that day down into April.
All right, so did we get complaints from that?
I haven't received any.
Nobody's realized it yet.
They haven't realized it yet.
Well, I would think that families
will be
that are
the first
making
spring
plans to
break
go out of town, I hope they look at the calendar.
But it'll be this March will be the first one.
Yeah, this
So
March
I
will
don't
be
think
the
they'll
first one.
realize it until they look at the calendar and go,
Right.
oh, we got another Friday.
And there will be a certain number of families that just go
Right.
Yeah.
and miss that
Right.
Friday.
Sometimes it has something to do with Good Friday, doesn't it? How we do that?
Sometimes it does.
Sometimes it does, yeah.
Say it again.
What was that?
What Chelsea indicated was sometimes it is the exchange day
Right.
for teachers
Right.
because of parent-teacher conferences.
Right. So it's basically, in my past, it's been
a day off.
a day with students not at school, which extends spring break.
You know, and I know, hearing all this discussion, you know, they gotta get the so many days in, and they only get 90 days in that second semester, right? And, you know, so you take another day off, that means we might have to go, you know, have to take a day off, so winter break, or go till right up that Friday before Memorial Day, then we have no built-in time
Right.
for a snow day.
Right.
So, I mean, it's all that discussion I'm sure they went through and tried to do their best.
Lots of discussion,
Yeah, a lot of discussion.
lots of counting.
So you mentioned PTO leadership
Yes.
was going to see this. The PTO leadership next meeting is next Thursday, a week from tomorrow. Will this be presented to them then, and will that be communicated in advance so they know? Because I know that's a popular topic that they want to be able to provide input on.
Sure. I would have to defer to Paul. Yes.
Is the late start day starting change to the last Wednesday of the month? Does that go into effect next school year also, 18 to 19, rather than just 19 to 20?
Did we change it for 18?
I thought we did. That
Yes,
before.
18, 19.
Okay, so that's going to start next year. And then I also noticed for this particular academic year, that in November, it's actually going to be the third, not the last, because we're off that
Right.
following. So that'll be important to point out to families also.
Right.
My only other, I too noticed that, but then I guess what I was questioning is the first day of school starting on a Tuesday. And how they arrived at that, where it said that in the calendar considerations says that they want to try to get as close to around August the 17th as possible.
Yeah.
And there should be, the first week of school should be 3 days long, and so we're 4 days long and farther away from August
Right.
17th.
And I think we focus on the word considerations. It just depends on where everything falls. And so the first day is, you have to count it as a contract day for teachers, and you have to count it as a student attendance day. So if you take that day away, then you have to add that back in someplace else. And so we generally try to start in December and work backward up, and then we start August and work down to December to see if the semesters work out. And we talked about moving that, but then it affects either a PD day, or it affects a conference comp day, or we get into December, where we would have split finals in a week,
Okay.
where we might have half days, or Thursday, Friday, and have to come back on a Monday before the holiday break. And so it really is a puzzle that you're just trying to fit together.
So there's a rationale for
There,
it.
there is, yeah.
One of the things, and I think we've seen experience before, we're taking 2 full weeks at the winter break. And so, because we're, Christmas and New Year's fall, it's right in the middle of the week, so it is difficult. So that in itself takes some days away. This year, we came back, we had 2 days. So I mean, like Amy said, it's pretty dynamic, depends on the
Yeah.
calendar and the days.
And I did notice the winter break, it makes sense for this particular academic year to do it the way it's being done. So, I mean, that just follows total logic. And then the teachers are coming back anyway on the 2nd and the 3rd for
Right.
Reference Days. So they'll be back, even though students are off.
And then the other thing that you have to look at is if you start a week later. We, generally receive criticism for starting too early in August, but if you push everything back a week, then at the end of the school year, you're getting out after Memorial Day, which is something that generally we have released before Memorial Day.
Right, and we want finals before winter break.
Right.
Yeah. That's
Right, that's the big.
that's been made
is.
very clear to us.
So then the April 10th, no school day, is that just an extra day off? That's not a professional development day, or?
No, that is the exchange day for teachers, for spring conferences.
Okay.
When is Good Friday?
It is, I wrote it down. It's that 10th.
Yeah. Yeah, we started doing that several years ago
April
because we
10th
couldn't,
is
we
Good Friday.
couldn't
Okay,
fulfill
all
the
right.
substitute requests.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so that's it. All right. It's later this year. Okay.
Okay, do you have any other questions or input? If you do, please email me and we will consider those and then bring back a recommendation for approval in February.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Were we nice?
You were very nice. Thank you.
Are we ever not?
Okay, 15.0, call for a special meeting February 2nd, 2018. May I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education call for a special meeting at 7:30 a.m. on Friday, February 2nd, 2018, for the purpose of participating in the Parkway Rockland Pattonville Legislative Breakfast held at Willowbrook Elementary School in Pattonville School District. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. 16.0, next scheduled closed session. The next anticipated closed session will be held on Wednesday, February 21st at 6 p.m. at Parkway Central Middle School. Details of the closed session will be posted within 24 hours of the anticipated meeting. 17.0, we're going to recess the public meeting and we're going to resume our closed meeting. Right. And we're going to may have a motion and a second to adjourn the regular meeting.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, everybody.